belong. You already
Don't
said
say
they're
it.
going to win.
Go ahead and say it. No, but I'm saying though.
Championship.
Let me tell you
Say it
something.
again. Say it again.
If
Not if.
I'm gonna have to write this one down. The Portland Trailblazers are gonna win the series.
Okay.
We already got that. Okay, but
right, if they win
tonight,
Chuck, we're even on bets.
listen,
That's bet.
if the Portland Trailblazers win tonight, they're going to sweep the Lakers.
Sweep.
Oh, stop it.
I'm telling you.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to, I think, the 23rd episode of Ball Don't Lie, the Michael Jordan number or LeBron number. We can debate that another time. But anyways, though, Hunter Pitcoff here, Matt Szczypiorski, doing some NBA Finals coverage. And we're going to go around the association like we always do. But let's start off with the finals here, Matt. This is being recorded at about 4:40 or so on Wednesday. So that means we just came off of Game 4. It was a close one. But the Lakers were able to come through in the clutch, holding off Miami 102-96. It was really kind of a tale of two halves for the Lakers. They were able to kind of pull away in the second half. LeBron had 20 points in the second half. Anthony Davis, 14 points in the second half. They also shot really well from the free throw line, 85.4%. Lakers are typically pretty bad from the free throw line. Also, Bam Adebayo came back as well, had a good game. But I want to ask you first off, how were the Lakers able to pull away here?
Well, I think, like you said, Hunter, they got some clutch shooting down the stretch from a guy that we had mentioned needed to step up in this series, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He had 15 points in total, some really great shots last night that extended the Lakers' lead in key moments. He had that three from the corner, and he also had that. I think the better play he made was the layup he made driving down the lane there with the shot clock running down, and then of course the AD hits the dagger three there at the end. So I think, what they got from their players, what they needed to get from them coming into the series was guys stepping up who can shoot the three.
Yeah, I mean, KCP had a really good game. Like you said, Matt hit timely shots. Also had 5 assists as well, which is obviously not a super common thing for him. But he was moving the ball around and making the right play rather than just taking the shot himself. And also, too, Rondo, I thought, had a pretty nice game as well. I think he only scored 2 points or only had 1 basket, which was right at the end of the game. But he made a good impact. Even saw guys like Markieff Morris, Kyle Kuzma hit some shots for them. So I think what we saw in Game 3 was, obviously Anthony Davis didn't play well, but the whole Lakers team, for the most part, didn't play well. But this was a team effort here, and I think they were able to capitalize as a result. All right. Also, too, LeBron James after the game saying job is not done, kind of an oath to Kobe Bryant, if you will, with the job not finished line that he had back in 2009 against the Magic. But he, of all people, knows that a team can come back from a 3-1 deficit. I think LeBron's a little familiar with that, especially in the finals. Also, he brought up an interesting point after the game 4, saying that he thought, unbiasedly, of course, that Anthony Davis should have been the Defensive Player of the Year. Do you think he's right?
Yeah, unbiasedly, of course. But I think AD is definitely one of the best defensive players in basketball. And, he was a runner-up for the award for a reason. But let's not forget that this is a regular season award, and Giannis was obviously the best defensive player during the regular season. I think, to say that, we're seeing AD a lot more now than Giannis, obviously, because Giannis was knocked out of the playoffs a month ago at this point. But, let's not forget that Giannis had a great regular season. Was a great defender all of the regular season.
Yeah, obviously, Giannis is kind of starting to become a Mr. 82 kind of guy, a guy who does great in the regular season and I wouldn't say chokes, but not as great in the playoffs, whereas Anthony Davis has kind of revived that reputation he may have had and is now playing great in the playoffs. Then you can blame that for situation or wherever the case may be. I unbiasedly agree with LeBron James as well. And here's why. Because the Lakers were like the single worst team on defense last season. And I know it's a different team, but Anthony Davis came in here and he made a stamp saying that I want us to be the best defensive team in the league. And you can argue whether that's true or not. They're at least one of the best. And Anthony Davis is a big reason why. When I watch basketball, I don't watch solely because of stats. I want to see what have you done for me lately. What plays do you make on the floor? Anthony Davis always jumps passing lanes. He can guard any position. He defends the rim. He can slide it up to the 4, can downplay to the 5. We saw him guard Jimmy Butler in this series and definitely slowed him down. He still had a good game, but not what he had in Game 3, and it worked fairly well for the Lakers. You can also credit Frank Vogel. They also signed some better defensive players as well. But I think Anthony Davis was the head of the snake, and he made it a known commodity for the Lakers that they had to win through defense and really change the culture of that team. So that's why I would have given him Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, it's a good point. But like you said, like they did change so much about that team, trading Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, and Josh Hart. And then, of course, getting a new coach in Frank Vogel, I think that all kind of helped with the Lakers becoming a better team on defense per se. But, I still would have given the award to Giannis. I think it was his to lose.
All right, talking me off my Laker fandom. That's fair. But anyways, though, I want to talk about Game 3 a little bit. I know we're going a little farther back, but Game 3 happened in between our last podcast and this one. And it's quite the game. So we saw Anthony Davis say after that he didn't like getting bullied after Game 3. And I think the reason why he brought that up, obviously he played bad, but it was how good Jimmy Butler played. I mean, I think we're kind of underrating this performance. He had a 40-point triple-double in the NBA Finals. I mean, Matt, that's like one of the greatest games in NBA Finals history that Jimmy Butler pulled off.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I see it's hard to overlook a 40-point triple-double, but I think because they are down in this series and the Lakers are the heavy favorites in this series, it's looked at as more of a nice story en route to the Lakers obviously winning this series. For a guy like Butler, who isn't known for getting 13 assists or known for getting triple-doubles at all for that matter, this was a dominant performance as we've seen in these playoffs, especially with him being without Adebayo and Dragic.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Butler absolutely put the team on his back here. That's what we saw. Like you said, 2 of their 3-4 best players were not playing, and Jimmy Butler did everything on the court, and he, in general, has been absolutely fantastic in these playoffs and specifically in these NBA Finals. So we made a little bit of a game here. It's kind of what we did with Jamal Murray. Would you rather? We're going to do Jimmy Butler, or we're going to throw a couple players at you. Again, me and Matt don't know what the other one's going to answer, so this one should be fun yet again. First one, I think this is an easy one. I'm throwing you a lob here, hopefully, but who would you rather have, Jimmy Butler or Paul George?
Jimmy Butler. It's not even a question because Paul George doesn't show up in the playoffs, and Jimmy Butler obviously improved.
Pandemic P.
Yep.
All right. I thought you were going to keep going. But, all right. I would have to agree with you on this one. Anytime I can throw hate at Paul George, I do. But Jimmy Butler, the difference is one guy can close out a game and the other one can't. But next one here, this one's going to tug at your heartstrings a little bit. Would you rather have Jimmy Butler or Paul George? Sorry, I said Paul George. Joel Embiid. Yep.
I'd rather have both and bring them back on the Sixers. I think this is tough. I think I'd say Jimmy Butler, though, just because of the simple fact that he's proven what he can do in the playoffs and in tough situations, and he stays on the floor. Embiid is constantly hurt. As much as I love watching him play, it's tough to pick a guy who plays 50-some games a year over a guy that has consistently shown up and consistently been healthy.
Yeah, I have to go Jimmy Butler on this one, too. I think Embiid is actually a more talented player, but there's just something about the great of Jimmy Butler and just like the by any means, no excuses attitude he has to get the job done. And then as we've seen, when Jimmy Butler was on the Sixers, they were significantly better. And when he's gone, they were significantly worse. And then we saw Embiid couldn't even win a game in the first round of the playoffs. And then whereas Jimmy Butler beat the team that they got swept by, with my opinion, maybe a less talented roster, you can argue, and then made it to the NBA Finals. So I'd have to go Jimmy Butler there as well. I think I just stabbed you with a dagger right there. I'm sorry, Matt.
Embiid was out there by himself in that series. There was nobody helping him.
Okay. All right. We got the next one here. This one's a little interesting, but would you rather have Jimmy Butler or Jason Tatum?
Yeah, I think this one was one of the more interesting ones you put up there. I think right now you might take Butler just based off of what's going on right now and how he's still playing and how he's been dominant in these playoffs. But I think I'm going to take Jason Tatum just because I think Tatum will come more into his own and eventually be better than Butler because he can score with more ease, I think. and I think he's going to get better defensively. So I think I'd take Tatum over Butler.
Yeah, I would word it the same exact way. I think right now I would rather have Jimmy Butler because of those leadership qualities, because of the experience. But I do think Jason Tatum has more room to grow. I think this is the best version of Jimmy Butler we're going to see.
Absolutely.
We have not seen the best version of Jason Tatum yet, and they're already pretty close to begin with. And to his credit, played pretty well in that series against Miami. So it wasn't like he didn't show up. He has. He's shown up every year. He's been in the playoffs. So I do think Jason Tatum, long term, you have to go with him. But maybe right now, I think I'd go Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Just barely. All right. I got another one here. I'm going to go a little out of order from what I wrote down. But would you rather have Jimmy Butler or Russell Westbrook? Actually, that's an easy one, I feel like.
It's Jimmy Butler by a light year because Russell Westbrook turns the ball over so dang much. And Jimmy Butler, you never see him turn the ball over. He's always making the right play. He's always making the right pass, the right shot. And he's so much better defensively than Westbrook is. Westbrook is just super fast and can dunk really ferociously, but he can't shoot. And Jimmy Butler at least can shoot.
All right. This one I think is actually kind of interesting here. Jimmy Butler or Luka Doncic?
I'm taking Doncic because he can do everything that Butler can do, but at a higher volume and at a younger age. He's not quite the defender that Butler is, obviously, but he can carry a team. He proved that in the playoffs this year when he dragged that Mavericks team to a tight series against the Clippers. And then he also, he creates his own shots. He can shoot the basketball with significant ease. And Butler, isn't as great of a three-point shooter that Doncic is. And I think that Doncic also gets his teammates more involved more consistently than Butler does. I just think Butler's in a better situation than Doncic is right now.
Yeah, I actually do agree with you. I am going Luka as well. I think he's a better player right now. That's not even a slight to Jimmy. I just think really highly of Luka Doncic, and I just think that he's already at an MVP kind of level, and he showed it in the playoffs too. And who knows, but maybe Jimmy Butler's still a better leader at this point. But if we're going pure basketball, it's Luka Doncic is a better player.
I agree.
All right. Now it starts getting a little interesting here. Actually, I thought of a name that I did not write down, but I think it's really debatable.
Okay.
Jimmy Butler or Nikola Jokic?
I'm going to take Butler just because of the fact that centers in this league aren't as big of a commodity as, a guy like Jimmy Butler is, who can guard all positions and play great defense and be a good wing player. I think wing players are more necessary for a good team nowadays than a center necessarily is. So I think for that reason, I'm thinking Butler.
Yeah, this one's really close. I was really on the fence about which way I'd go. Maybe I'm sipping the Miami Heat Kool-Aid. I also have to go Jimmy Butler here for a lot of the reasons you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Nikola Jokic, though, almost plays like a guard and he's 7 foot. I think if I'm building a team, maybe I actually go Jokic. But in terms of who's a better player, I'm leaning a little bit towards Jimmy Butler just because of that sheer will that he has. But Nikola, that one's really close. That one I was really struggling with. And that's why I brought it up. All right, cool. Now I think it gets even more interesting here. Would you rather have Jimmy Butler or Damian Lillard?
I am going to take Lillard, although I think if you put Lillard on this Heat team, I don't think they'd be as successful, but I just think that's just because of the way Butler plays with that team and the way his style fits that culture and that team. But I still think I would rather take Damian Lillard just because of the way that he can score in bunches. Butler can't necessarily do that. Yeah, I think I'd rather take Lillard, but I think it is close.
Yeah, God, we're agreeing on everything. I take Damian Lillard too. I just think he's a better player. Not like that. It's like you said, like this guy can roll. Like Jimmy Butler dropping 40 is like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Damian Lillard does that in his sleep. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the big difference there. And obviously Damian Lillard has shown the leadership. He has the clutch gene too, and has almost all the accolades Jimmy Butler has. I guess minus the finals appearance now that Butler has up on him.
Mm.
Next one I think is even a little more interesting because we just saw Jimmy Butler take down the Bucks. So would you rather have Jimmy Butler or Giannis Antetokounmpo?
I think we're sipping too much of that Heat Kool-Aid. I think I still got to take Giannis. He's back-to-back MVP for a reason. I know you said Mr. 82 earlier, with him being just a regular season player. But he has shown up in the playoffs. Just that other guys around him didn't show up in the playoffs. Chris Middleton. Now, I think you could make an argument for Butler, but he's the back-to-back MVP. His defensive player of the year. I'm still taking Giannis.
Yeah, I think Giannis is still a better player. Like you said, I think you can make an argument Giannis is the best player in the league. I don't think you can make an argument for Jimmy Butler being the best player in the league. But Giannis has one, and for reasons that you alluded to. Last but not least on this list, and I only bring it up because the whole mantra behind him is that he's not good in the playoffs. And like we alluded to, another Mr. 82 guy, stat padding. Would you rather have Jimmy Butler or James Harden?
This might be a hot take, but I'm taking Jimmy Butler. He's more efficient scoring the basketball than Harden is. Harden just jacks up 25 shots a game and will get 30 points. But Butler is more efficient in shooting, and he's also getting his teammates involved, which is not something that James Harden is accustomed to. So I think – and also, the thing is, Harden is famous for getting the free throw line and getting, those ridiculous foul calls. But Jimmy Butler also gets the free throw line a ton as well. So I think, with the fact that Butler has proven that he can play in the playoffs and, he can score efficiently without taking as many shots as Harden does, I think I'm taking Butler.
I think this is our first and only disagreement here. I'm still going James Harden. And obviously, we've seen Jimmy Butler never really fold under pressure. We've seen it with Harden. But at the same time, though, I think Harden takes a little too much criticism sometimes. I think we forget how good of a player he is. And I do disagree with the fact James Harden's actually a very good passer. We obviously get very in love with the scoring aspect of it. But James Harden's a great facilitator. He's led the league in assists before. This guy can fall into 8 assists a game. It's not that hard for him. And we saw a lot of it disappear a bit when Clint Capella was gone, and they added another ball-dominant player, Russell Westbrook. But James Harden is a true combo guard. And we even saw him this year play better on defense. I mean, he had, the game, or I say series-clinching block against Lou Dort, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed that he's actually a pretty solid defender when he actually cares to. Now, from a competitive standpoint, not many players are more competitive than Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. And I would also say that James Harden is not on that caliber. So you can make the argument either way. But I do think that James Harden is a guy who can single-handedly carry a team as well.
That's a good point. I mean, he's shown the ability to do it. He has before. It's just interesting to me. Do you think that he was, when he was leading the league in assists, do you think that was because of the offense that he was in?
Not necessarily. I mean, Chris Paul was his teammate too. He had another great ball handler and a guy who's an even better passer than James Harden is. But I also think too that James Harden is, I think he gets a little too much criticism. That's my opinion. I was losing my train of thought a little bit there. But I think James Harden, he's had a couple moments. Here it is again. He's had a couple moments where I think he got a little unlucky. With Chris Paul getting hurt in the 2017 NBA Western Conference Finals,
Mm-hmm.
James Harden easily, they would have went to the finals and they would have killed the Cavs that year. That's not even close. Again, we saw them, but then at the same time, I think they had a golden opportunity when Kevin Durant went down, and they didn't execute on it. So you can really look at it either way. But I think some of these Rockets teams were really, really good. And I think sometimes that they just ran to better teams like the Warriors.
That's fair enough.
So, and Jimmy Butler obviously never had to deal with – I mean, I guess he technically did. But even then, though, they did play in the playoffs. I mean, the Timberwolves were a terrible organization and still are. But James Harden did outperform Jimmy Butler that one time they played. But anyways, though, let's talk about a guy who is actually playing in this series. And that's Bam Adebayo. He is finally back. It was really funny. I heard the story they told before the game that he couldn't do a push-up because that's how bad his neck was.
Right.
The guy couldn't do a push-up. And they said if he can do a push-up, he can play. And I don't know if that was the only ultimate deciding factor, but he did a push-up before Game 4, They put him in the starting lineup, and he played pretty well. I believe he had, let me look it up real quick. I want to say 15 points. 15 points, 7 rebounds, 6 of 8 shooting from the field. Surprised he only shot the ball 8 times. But how did Bam look in his first game back?
Well, I want to start off by saying if that's the way they're determining if he can play or not, that sounds like a whole lot of Philadelphia Eagles vibes right now. But I'm going to say, I think Adebayo looked really good for his first game back from injury of that magnitude. Like a neck injury is nothing to mess around with. That's pretty serious. But he shot the ball really efficiently, like you said, 6 of 8. But his rebounding numbers were down. And he did pretty well down low, allowing only 22 points to AD, which is not that much for Anthony Davis, especially in the playoffs. But with him not being 100% and having to miss the past 2 games, it's really killed this Heat team.
Yeah, you can argue whether or not him playing would have completely altered the series or like given the Heat a fighting chance. I mean, they're obviously not out of it yet, but Bam Adebayo looked pretty good, and he honestly didn't look super hurt either. Like when I was watching him play, like he didn't look like he was hampered at all by his injury. Like he looked like about what he normally looks, and I don't really think he had a minutes restriction either. Like he was a full go. So I respect the toughness from Bam and the winning mentality that him and the Miami Heat have created this year. But this is unfortunately for the Heat, they really just didn't catch a break either in terms of the injuries because Goran Dragic, he's still out with the foot injury from game 1. He tried giving it a go game 4, but it just wasn't enough. He got really emotional in between the games. I forgot which one it was, but he was kind of questioning God a little bit, being like, why is it me? Why is this happening right now? Being frustrated with the circumstances he's dealing with. But I want to first ask you, do you expect him to even make a return in this series?
I don't expect him to return. Watching him warm up yesterday before the game, he just could not make any sort of cuts or any kind of basketball moves. He's just not ready right now. He really isn't.
Yeah, I agree with you because I heard this injury normally takes about 3 weeks at least to come back from. And obviously that's not going to fit the time frame here for the NBA Finals, unfortunately. So I do think Goran Dragic is probably not going to play. But I also want to ask you too, Matt, do you think that this series without Goran Dragic, or maybe with him, I should say, would have been a whole lot different? Or do you think that the Heat have done a nice job kind of filling in for him and maybe it wouldn't have been as big of an impact if he was there or not?
Well, the thing with Miami is, we talked about it a little bit before the series began last week. It's that they're such a deep team that even if they lose a guy like Dragic, they're so deep behind him. But, losing a guy like Dragic, with the veteran presence and, with the way he was scoring in these playoffs, it does hurt. But I don't think he makes that huge of a difference where we wouldn't be where we are now. I still think the Lakers would have a 3-1 lead. And I still think, I don't know if he makes enough of a difference for the series to be anything different than that. Maybe tied. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because the Heat have had a different player lead them in scoring each series. And Goran Dragic was the leading scorer for the Heat against Indiana in the first round. Then Jimmy Butler was leading scorer against Milwaukee. Bam, leading scorer against Boston. I'm assuming now it's Jimmy Butler again, who's the leading scorer in this series. But so it's kind of been by committee. And even without Goran Dragic, like you said, Matt, we've seen both Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson play pretty well in this series, especially Tyler Hero, who is the youngest player to ever start in an NBA Finals game. And I know they have a lot of promise in him. I don't know about you, Matt. I don't think that if they make a move for a star, I think Tyler Hero is off limits. I really don't think that they trade him.
Yeah, I think if they were to do like a big superstar move, I think they would probably have to include guys like Duncan Robinson and Goran Dragic and probably not Tyler Hero. I mean, he's so young, and to have like this, the way he's playing right now at such a young age in a high pressure situation, there's no way they can get rid of him.
Yeah, he had that little face going on. That kind of went viral for Tyler Hero. The one thing he's showing that he's not afraid. And he is very, very confident. It's kind of what we saw with John Morant for the Memphis Grizzlies this year. There's no moment too big for this kid. And that attitude, the Heat embrace it. They embrace, that winner's mentality no matter how old you are. But we also talked about some X factors into the series, some guys that maybe will step up a little bit and outside the stars of the series, really make a big impact. Matt, I want to ask you, were we right with our picks, or were there a couple guys that maybe surprised you a bit?
Well, we talked a lot about Jay Crowder last week, and he's been sort of quiet in this series. We really haven't heard a lot from him. So I'll say in that respect, we were probably a little bit off. But obviously Tyler Hero, like we said, he was the co-star of Game 3 with Jimmy Butler. He's been great this entire series. Duncan Robinson hit some clutch shots last night for Miami. It's just been like we said earlier, it's been by committee this whole playoffs for Miami. I think, in terms of X factors, guys like KCP has really stepped up. Danny Green is still kind of inconsistent shooting the ball. So, I think, and we were right about some of them, but probably wrong about some of the other ones.
Yeah, I think someone that I don't think either of us mentioned was Kelly Olynyk. I mean, he did not have a good game 4 last night, but games 2 and 3, I believe he had 24 points game 2 and 17 in game 3. And that was with Bam Adebayo out of the lineup. So he was the guy who stepped up for Miami. They're not the same player. Don't expect the same thing for Olynyk to replicate what Bam brings. But he gave him something in very valuable minutes and gave him a different element. And we saw him get some more playing time as a result.
Yeah, I don't think Kelly Olynyk was on our radar just because he hadn't played at all, as much or if at all in the past couple of series. But I think the only reason he was in is because of obviously Bam Adebayo's injury. But he did play well with those points. But I question his defense a little bit, how he's had to guard Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard down low. So obviously it's a big matchup disadvantage for him. But he was definitely not on our radar.
Yeah, and then a guy we saw, that stepped up for the Miami Heat, in my opinion, is the guy who actually made first-team All-Rookie this year. That's not Tyler Hero. That's Kendrick Nunn. With Goran Dragic out, they kind of looked to somebody else off the bench, and Kendrick Nunn was that guy who hasn't really gotten off or anything, but he's given them good minutes, and it helps Miami with that depth not really miss a beat. It's funny because he was their starter all season long over Goran Dragic, but they made the change in the playoffs, and I think it was the right change to put Goran in the starting lineup, but they didn't only cut down Kendrick's minutes. They basically took him out of the rotation. They shortened their rotation to about 7-8 guys, and he got the bad end of the stick there. But now he's starting to play a little more, and it gives the Heat a different look, or even a similar look with Kendrick Nunn in there, because his game is very similar to Goran Dragic. Is just like a score-first guard who also can pass a little bit too.
Yeah, maybe it's the lefty thing they got going on there.
They got the lefty thing, yeah.
And Kendrick Nunn, but he's been decent. He's been a little inconsistent though. I think he was 2 for 11 last night. And for a guy who's getting the minutes that they're asking him to, he can't be going 2 for 11 in a finals game.
That's true. Yeah, he loves to get his shots up. That is definitely Kendrick Nunn's MO when he's on the basketball court. But let's also talk about finals MVP a little bit here. You picked Anthony Davis to win it. I picked LeBron. Do you still stand by your pick?
I'm going to say that you were probably right. After that disappearance by AD in the Game 3 loss, I think I've gotten off of the AD hype train here a little bit. If he has a better series clinching performance than LeBron, I think he could jump back into the leader circle. But LeBron has outscored AD the last 3 games. He's coming for that trophy, man. He wants it.
Yeah, I do think LeBron, it's right now his to lose. If this is a short series, if the Lakers do happen to win on Friday night, you look at it and you go, LeBron didn't have a great game 3, but he still had 25 points and almost a triple-double. Whereas Anthony Davis had a really bad game 3.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of a couple years ago when Steph Curry and KD, we were arguing who's going to win Finals MVP. I believe that was against Cleveland for the final time. And Steph Curry had a dud game 4 or something like that, or game 3. He just had a really bad game. But arguably was as good, if not better, than Kevin Durant in the other games. But since that one game was so bad and KD still played pretty well, they gave it to Kevin Durant because he was good for all 4 games. And that's kind of what happens when you play in a shorter series, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point, Hunter, to bring up the fact that it's a short series. It's probably going to affect the voting here a little bit, especially LeBron being consistently getting 20-plus points a game, especially in the finals. He's coming for that trophy. We all know it.
Yeah, I guess a competition within a competition, if you will. But speaking of Game 5, that's going to be this Friday night. We're going to see what happens. I will either have one of the best days of my life or I'm going to have to suffer for a couple days. But anyways, though, Matt, I'll ask you, do you think the Lakers are going to seal Miami's fate here, or do you think they do elongate the series and make it 6-7 games?
I don't think the Lakers want to extend this any further. LeBron is going to play like a madman on Friday night. I think they lock it up and the King gets his MVP, and then everyone on ESPN for the next week will be having the LeBron-MJ debate for the 1,000th time.
Yeah, I guess it'll be good for content purposes. But that's going to wrap it up here for our NBA Finals preview. Again, we usually start with the Around the Association, but obviously the NBA Finals is a little bit more of a pressing topic right now, so we'll get to the other stuff later into the podcast, and that is where we're at right now. Still got a good amount of stuff to talk about, some more serious stuff, some kind of fun stuff that, happened throughout the week. But Matt, we're going to start off with your team because we've been talking about mine so much here. Doc Rivers accepting the job to be the Philadelphia Sixers head coach. Apparently he was ready to kind of just take a break from coaching completely before accepting the job. I'm not even going to ask you a question here, Matt. I'm just going to let you talk. Go ahead.
Oh, my God. Thank God. Some competency in a Philadelphia sports organization. He also, in his introductory press conference, he didn't mention Al Horford when he was listing guys who was excited about coaching. So I'm pumped to have him already. I think, Doc is the perfect fit for the job. My man is a winner, and he's won with a lot less talent than this. If anyone can get the best out of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons on the floor together, it's Glenn Rivers.
I love how you called him by his first name. Oh, my God. We're on first name basis with Doc right now. I called him Glenn. But, yeah, this was a great hire, in my opinion. Brett Brown, I think he overdid his stay a little bit. I think he had to get kicked out of the house at some point and go look for his own place. Maybe he won't. Maybe he's just going to be homeless for a while. Or you can crash to somebody else's place and be an assistant coach or something. But anyway, we'll stop with those weird references I just made off the top. But let's talk about it, Matt. I'm assuming you really like this hire, of course, but do you think he's the right fit for the job? Do you think that he can kind of bring this Sixers team back toward the top where they arguably should have been this year?
I think he is. Like I said earlier, he's a winner. Like, he's proven he could win with a lot less talent than this. And we said earlier, this is one of the most talented rosters in the league besides Al Horford. So I think, if anybody's going to get the best out of this roster, it's going to be a guy like Doc Rivers, who has proven that he can win in this league and he knows how to do it. And he's an experienced guy. He's been around. He's been a head coach for like 15, 20 years. He knows what he's doing. And he's, I think with Embiid and Simmons, they're going to get a lot of respect from him because he's a big-time players coach, and they're going to respect him for that.
Yeah, Matt, I think you just buried the hatchet for any opportunity we may have to interview Al Horford for our podcast. He's never going to want to come on. But no, honestly, though, I think what the Sixers needed was leadership. I think they lost that action when Jimmy Butler left the team. Right. And he even said after he left that the reason why he went to Miami was because of the stability and the leadership from Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. Those guys have been there for decades. Eric Spoelstra, this is like his 25th year with the Miami Heat. Like, that's crazy. He's not even that old. And Pat Riley, of course, is a winner everywhere he's gone and at whatever level he takes within that organization. That's why Jimmy Butler left. He said that the Sixers were dysfunctional. They said the front office had no idea what they were doing and that the coaching was a mess. But Doc Rivers, this guy has gone through a lot. We talked about last week. I mean, he was the guy who was kind of leading the charge as the organization during the Donald Sterling stuff with the Clippers. Obviously, he won a championship with the Celtics. The guy's got a really great winning record as a head coach. So I want to ask you this, too, because I think it's interesting. We saw Doc Rivers not really succeed at it, but he kind of wore two hats for a while with the Clippers. He was both the general manager and the head coach. I want to know, do you think Elton Brand's going to get fired anytime soon and then Doc Rivers takes that job?
Well, I really hope Elton Brand gets fired, but I don't think that's what Doc Rivers is necessarily looking for. I don't think he wants all that power again. I think that's what burnt him out in L.A., so I think we'll just stick to coaching. I will, however, sell my soul for Masai or Ujiri.
Yeah, they would have to pay a lot of money to take him away from Toronto because he's got a pretty nice gig there. But at the same time, though, maybe they just give him a blank check, tell him whatever they're right, and they'll pay it. But I do agree with you. There's a really interesting point. Doc Rivers is a little bit of an older head coach, and I think, the stress of being a head coach is a lot, and the stress of being a general manager is a lot. Now you're working 2 full-time jobs. I think it doesn't typically end well. So I do agree with you. I think that it may come to it, though. I would not be shocked if it comes to it. I wouldn't shock me in the slightest, but it's probably best if they actually find somebody else to have, 2 guys do their own jobs.
Yeah, pretty much anybody but Elton Brand is what I'm rooting for right now.
Okay, let's talk about another team in that same division, in the Brooklyn Nets. And Matt, I just want to know, what the hell's going on with Kyrie Irving? I mean, this guy's always just on another planet, maybe a flat one, if you will. But anyways, though, we went on Kevin Durant's podcast. He said the Nets don't really have a head coach, and that he's never played with a guy who can close out games the way he can until Kevin Durant. And I love Kyrie from a basketball perspective. He's one of my favorite players I've ever watched play basketball. And as a youngin, I try to emulate some of his handles, some of his finishes, and some of the moves he has. But I mean, it's getting pretty hard to come to the Kyrie's defense. He's just burning bridges at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like you said before, you put it perfectly. What the hell is he talking about, man? Sure, KD is one of the best closers in the sport. Nobody's going to debate that. But LeBron is right there with him, and he always has been. Kyrie might have the weirdest, most poorly timed hot takes in the entire league.
Yeah, they range from a lot of different places. In trying to explaining himself, he said it was not a diss to LeBron, but it clearly was a diss to LeBron. What other teammate would you have been talking about? There wasn't, you can even make the argument, a subtopic did Jason Tatum die? He's a pretty good player.
You know what? He was probably talking about Al Horford. That's what he was doing.
Yeah, he's talking about Al Horford. He's he just wasn't as good of a closer as I was.
You're forgiven.
But yeah, I guess we'll start with the LeBron point. LeBron has hit more game-winning shots than you have. You haven't nearly won as many games since you were not teammates with LeBron. With outside of LeBron, a more talented roster in Boston. So, I don't know what he's talking about here. I don't know what his issue is with LeBron. I feel if anything, he should be thankful for him. I understand him wanting to leave and have his own team. I think that's totally fine. He got what he wanted in the championship, and now he wants to show that he can do it himself. I respect it. And he's a talented enough player that I think he can, warrant that. But at the same time, though, don't bite the hand that feeds you. LeBron James was statistically a better closer when you were both teammates. So you're literally wrong about this point.
Yeah, and to say I want to go win a title by myself, I want to prove that I can lead a team by myself. Bro, you just got Kevin Durant to join your team. If you win a championship, it's going to be Kevin Durant's team. It's not going to be your team.
Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe he's trying to just talk a whole lot so people think it is his team. But I agree with you, Matt. Kevin Durant is also a better player than you. And so I don't really know where he's going with this one here. But the Steve Nash one, I think that's the bigger issue because Steve Nash, this is, of course, his first time as a head coach of the team. And this one was taken maybe a little out of context in the sense that he did bring up Steve Nash can be the coach, or Kevin Durant can be a coach on the floor. I could be a coach on the floor. Jacques Vaughn, who was the interim head coach and still there, can be a head coach. But at the same time, though, you have one head coach, and that's Steve Nash. And I wouldn't particularly love him ranting this to the media, if you will. Obviously, he was just on a podcast with Kevin Durant, but we all saw it. We all listened to it. And it kind of sounded like he was undermining his own head coach, who was, has to prove himself still because he's never been a head coach before.
Yeah, I think, just the fact that Steve Nash had a great career and, obviously a Hall of Famer MVP, he demands a little bit more respect than that. And, obviously it is his first time on the job. That makes it a little bit harder to command respect. But if I were Steve Nash, I'd want to have a little conversation with Kyrie here. Maybe he'll demand a little bit more respect.
Yeah, I don't think people were bashing on Steve Nash after this at all, have control of your player or something like that, because we all know how Kyrie is, but it doesn't feel good for him to make these stupid comments like this that clearly are going to affect make some sort of rift potentially between you and your head coach who just got there. So
They even out of practice. They haven't even talked to each other yet.
yeah, exactly. Like they probably only done Zoom conversations since the hiring, which was like just over a month ago. But anyways, though, let's talk about the ladies a little bit here. I'm not gonna pretend like I know a whole lot about the WNBA, but no team gets left behind on Ball Don't Lie. Seattle Storm, they sweep the Las Vegas Aces. God, that has a mouthful. I usually don't say it like that, but they won 3-0 in the finals. I thought it was really interesting. I looked into it. Sue Bird. She's 40 years old. Her fourth WNBA title. She's won 3 different titles in 3 different decades. I think there's only like 3 or 4 players, both NBA and WNBA combined, that have done that. I know Tim Duncan's one of them, but it's quite the accomplishment in itself, obviously. The 4 titles, that is a WNBA record with the Houston Comets, who I don't even think are a team anymore, and the Minnesota Lynx, who are. They were 12-1 in the on their road to the finals, which is, I believe, the most, or like one of the best records of all time. Breanna Stewart, who I do know, she went to UConn, and she was very good there. She had 26 points, won Finals MVP, 26 points in Game 3, and then they just blew the Sox off the Seattle Storm, 92-59. So, Matt, we won't get any Title IX violations here. We cover everything on Ball Don't Lie.
Absolutely. You got to give the ladies some respect. If the NBA players can respect them, we can respect them too.
Absolutely. Just want to throw that nugget in there as well. And Alvin Gentry accepts a job with the Kings, not as the head coach, but joining Luke Walton's staff as the assistant head coach there. I think I kind of know this answer, and I may know yours too, but we should talk about it anyway. Do you think Alvin Gentry gets another head coaching job again, or do you think at this point this is probably just him, tipping the cap, being like, all right, I'll be a number 2 now?
Yeah, this is me putting on my big brain thinking cap here. I think if he's going to Sacramento, I think he knows what the situation there for Luke Walton is, and it's looking a little bit grim. It's been proven in his last 2 stops, Sacramento and with the Lakers, that some players, Buddy Hield, don't really care for him. I think Gentry sees himself as a possible replacement for Walton as an interim head coach. Maybe if he gets fired mid-season, I think he put himself in a good situation. Big brain move.
Yeah, that is some definitely big brain moves right there. Kind of a little coup d'etat going on there. Kind of what we saw with Ty Lue and David Blatt in Cleveland. But maybe to a not as cool of an extent, because the Kings probably will only win a couple more games, if that. But anyways, though, yeah, it was interesting for him to take that job, and maybe in the back of his mind he's thinking that I don't think Alvin Gentry was going to get a job on the open market to be a head coach for any of these teams. I believe he's maybe the oldest head coach in the league, or he's really up there. He's like one of the oldest. And it seems like, when we look at the NFL, we look at the NBA, the young guy typically gets the job unless you're a super proven person. It's just kind of how corporate America works, typically speaking. But I want to know, do you think this move, does this make an immediate impact on the Kings? Like, how does that help their franchise and their team going forward?
Well, I don't think it's going to make an immediate impact. It's not going to have that much of an impact on them. But, at the end of the day, more experience is better than nothing, especially with this young roster and the fact this organization is consistently a mess. So, I don't think it'll have that much of an impact, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's a good point. And then also you kind of hinted at before, Buddy Hield doesn't really, not really on the same page as the Kings right now. Apparently he's been ducking calls left and right from Luke Walton and them. So I want to know, do you think it's already a foregone conclusion that this guy's gone next season?
Oh, God, I hope so. I need him on the Sixers like I need air to breathe. He is everything the Sixers are missing. Give me Buddy for Horford, Richardson, and whatever first-rounder you want, please. But I think, if this isn't the end, then I don't know what is. Like, if he's dodging the head coach's phone calls in a messy organization like Sacramento, he's gone.
I don't blame him for trying to force his way out. It's not like, people like going to Sacramento and playing for the Kings. They did obviously get rid of Vlade Divac. He is no longer the guy there anymore. But Buddy Hield, he did get his bag because he was kind of willing to sit out games if he wasn't going to get his money. They did pay him, which may make it easier to trade him now because you could probably get a lot of assets back to match that contract. but maybe not so too, because maybe teams are going to be more reluctant, and as a result, Buddy Hield is going to be stuck in purgatory.
Yeah, I hope. Like I said earlier, I need the Sixers to get him. I need it.
Yeah, he's a guy who I just think could fit on any team just because of the way he plays. And I think the Sixers, as Matt is cheering over here, would love a backcourt of Ben Simmons and Buddy Hield to lead the charge there. That's a big smile on your face. But anyways, though, a little more stuff around the association here. Russell Westbrook left an $8,000 tip for the room service employees at Disney. And his room apparently was even spotless after he left. So I credit him. I credit him because he treated those employees well. They worked really hard during difficult times. And you got to respect guys going out of their way to do things like that.
Well, he certainly treated the room and the employees better than he treated the basketball, just throwing things everywhere. Yeah, that's a shot. That's a shot. Yeah.
Russell Westbrook also will not be coming on the podcast anytime soon. That will not happen either.
Enemies out here.
Oh my God. Burning bridges left and right. Our PR department is having a headache right now. But anyways, though, Danny Ainge saying Kemba Walker was not himself in the NBA bubble. I'm not sure if he meant that physically because I know he's been dealing with a knee injury, or mentally. Maybe he wasn't there, or both. But do you see Kemba Walker? Do you think he's the true X factor for the Celtics?
Well, I think the series against the Heat proved that he is. Brown and Tatum both played well in that series. Marcus Smart played well in that series. And they still came up short, mostly because they didn't get the typical Kemba Walker performance they were used to seeing in the regular season. He didn't play well offensively or defensively. I
agree with you. I think Kemba Walker is the ultimate X factor on this team. Now, look, you could call a guy who's a star player an X factor, in my opinion, because we saw it now. The torch was passed. This is Jason Tatum's team now. I actually think you can make the argument that Jaylen Brown's actually the second best player on this team now. And even if you don't, I just think like when Kemba Walker gets hot and he starts taking over a game, it's just different. Like cardiac Kemba is a real thing. This guy just can hit a whole nother level sometimes and just be unguardable, and that just opens up everything for this team. And he's a rhythm guy. Once he gets in a rhythm, he's a really hard guard.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like you said, cardiac Kemba, he's shown countless times in the NBA ever since that March Madness run he was on in college that he's still that guy, and he can still have the ice water in the veins and the games on the line. We just didn't get to see it this playoffs, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like we said, I hope the best for Kemba, boogie down Kemba, if you will. But looking at another guard, pretty interesting thing here. There's a trade rumor floating around, and who knows how true it is or not, that the Nuggets are looking to make a move for Drew Holiday from the Pelicans. What do you think a package would look like? What would it take to get him? And do you think the Pelicans would trade him?
I think the Pelicans are actively shopping him just so they can move Lonzo Ball into a more dominant ball handler role because, obviously Holiday is also a point guard. And, having them start at the same time was kind of awkward a little bit for the Pelicans this year. But I think in terms of trade packages, I think for the Nuggets, I think the key would be trying to do this deal without including Michael Porter Jr. And I don't know if they'll be able to do it.
Interesting. I think that they actually it depends how available Drew Holiday is. I slightly disagree. I don't think that I wouldn't say they're actively shopping him, but I think they would move him for the right price. Kind of like if you want to give like another situation, like how the Jets kind of handled the Jamal Adams trade. Like they weren't going to trade him unless someone overpaid for him, and Seattle did overpay for him. But let's not cross over too much into a different sport here, but that's kind of how I think they'll approach this one. If the Nuggets are willing to give up a king's ransom for Drew Holiday, they'll do it. I think a realistic trade package, I think Gary Harris is probably going to be in that trade. And then I think you can maybe get by without giving up Michael Porter. I don't think they'd want to give him up. I'd say maybe like a Will Barton's in that deal. Maybe they give a Bol, the great Bol, the next superstar in the making. But I don't know. But anyways, picks as well, like usual. Maybe it's a 3-team deal, but I would love Drew Holiday with that team. I mean, I think what I really like about Drew Holiday is we saw that he can play either guard spot really well, whether it's on or off the ball at the 1 or the 2. He's a great defender, and I think him and Jamal Murray would be one of the best backcourts in the NBA.
I definitely agree with you there. I think, I think they could probably split bringing the ball up, ball handling duties pretty evenly. I think also that, like you said, Jamal Murray and Holiday in terms of defense would be great because I don't think Murray's there yet defensively, but Drew Holiday has proven that he is a fantastic perimeter defender. I think he'd be great for that team.
And also, too, I mean, obviously, one, you just look at the pure upgrade, like Drew Holiday would be immediately the third best player on that team.
Right.
I would say that Jamal Murray is better than him at this point. But Drew Holiday also has played with a really good big man who can do a lot of things in Anthony Davis, and he had no issues playing with him. I think we would, in theory, see the same thing with Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, I mean, we would sure hope so. I mean, we saw Holiday throw some lobs to AD. I'd love to see some Nikola Jokic white man jump lobs.
Yeah, maybe it'll be more dribble handoffs, or a nice pick and roll layup. Let's keep our standards realistic here. But last but not least, or I got two more things, but Adam Silver says the NBA players are unlikely to go to the 2021 Olympics. I mean, that's a long time from now, obviously. Who even knows if there will be Olympics, what capacity it is, but it's really interesting. He's already shutting it off. Like, nope, this is not happening.
Well, yeah, that is interesting, especially since we've had them there in every Olympics for a while now. But I think the U.S. would still be their award to lose, even if they send over amateurs. I think the U.S. is just better at basketball than most other countries.
I would disagree with that last part, only because, like, if the NBA players are playing, they're going to win. I think there's no debate. However, though, I guess if it's all purely amateurs, like if even like let's say like Luka Doncic can't play, right? Like it's not just Americans, it's like everyone. Then I agree with you. It's going to be the U.S. to lose if it's just the best college players in the country, versus whoever that is. But I don't know, maybe not though, because I mean the EuroLeague's got some there's a lot of good countries that are good at basketball now. It depend on what considers an amateur and what doesn't. Because if, like, the EuroLeague dudes are allowed to play and stuff like that, and the CBA dudes are allowed to play, I don't necessarily think that the United States would win.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially with the rise in basketball popularity overseas. But I have confidence in the Americans.
But I also think it raises a question, too, like, if he's saying it's unlikely they play, do you think that means that it's because the NBA is going to be playing during that time?
Probably. I think that's probably what it means, especially with the season going into obviously October this year. I think, logistically it just makes sense that the players are probably going to carry over into June, July, possibly into August.
Yeah, I think that's what Adam Silver is maybe hinting at. Like, well, that's because they're going to be playing during this time. But maybe didn't want to admit it. But last but not least here on the Around the Association, Mark Jackson is one of my favorite broadcasters solely because of some of the funny things he says. Some of those one-liners are great. And he had another one here. Mark Jackson said, quote, "A hero is more than a sandwich on national television." I mean, I just got a kick out of that. That was great.
Mama, there goes that man. It's a hoagie, and you all know it, by the way. It's a hoagie.
No, it is not.
What do you call
a sandwich? That's
what? You can call so many things a sandwich. When you go to Subway, what do you get? A sandwich?
Sure.
No, Hunter. No, Hunter.
It depends. I would never call it a hoagie though. I mean, mainly it's a hero, but
oh my God! Don't do this, Hunter. Don't let Mark Jackson influence you.
Well, me and Mark Jackson are both from New York, so I'm sure he would call it the same thing. And if I didn't call it a hero, it'd be called a sub.
Okay, that's fair. A sub is fair. Don't call it a hero.
Oh, man. Yeah, see, that's why you said a hero is more than a sandwich. Because he's from New York. He knows it.
It's a hoagie.
Oh, my God. A hoagie is more than a sandwich. Stop. Anyways, though, that's going to wrap it up for the Around the Association. Gonna give our players of the week here. Matt, I will let you go first. Who is number one on your list?
I think there's probably going to be a lot of overlap here, obviously, because there's only two teams playing. But I'm going to start off with Jimmy Butler. We talked already about his dominant Game 3 performance, but he has yet to score less than 22 points in a game this series, while also averaging 10 assists a game in the series. So I think, obviously he's been the heart and soul for Miami for this entirety of the season and through the playoffs. And he's really showed up here in the NBA Finals. I think it's just gotten to the point where for this Heat team, they're pretty outmatched in terms of just studded talent.
Yeah, I also had Jimmy Butler on my list. I thought that was a pretty obvious one. He's played great all series, had the great Game 3. But a guy who I also had on my list, and I talked about him a little bit earlier, but that's Kelly Olynyk, only because we didn't really expect him to do what he did. Shot the ball really well from 3, had some good points, and made an impact for the Heat with Bam Adebayo out.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point, but he also played some piss-poor defense. So,
yeah.
But
you know me, I like to get really bougie with these Player of the Weeks. I don't always go to
I keep it more,
realistic.
More realistic, yeah. So with that being said, my second Player of the Week is LeBron James. He's the front runner for the series MVP. We gave his stats earlier. He said he played one of the best games ever in Game 4, in his opinion. So you can tell that he's on a mission.
Yeah, LeBron definitely is on a mission for sure. I want to throw another name out there? Let's throw another name out there. Let's give some credit to the KCP. I mean, he played really well, and I said he was going to be an impact for this Lakers team. He had a really good Game 1, some really bad Game 2 and Game 3 performances, but bounced back again, and has kind of shown to be, we talk about all the time. The Lakers don't have a number 3 guy, an established number 3 guy, and it's always by committee. And KCP was the by committee guy, and it helped get him up to 3-1 in the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just his performance down the stretch in Game 4 alone is reason to be on this list, maybe, just because of the clutch shots he hit. And he hasn't been playing that terrible on defense, which is surprising for him. But I think the clutch shots alone put him on this list.
Yeah, for sure. Matt, I believe you have one more guy on your list.
Yeah, another obvious one is Anthony Davis. Thought for a while.
So boring.
I'm sorry. It's what it is, brother. It's what it is.
Fair.
You got Kelly Olynyk on your friggin' list. I'm not doing that. No. Anthony Davis. I thought for a while that he might just edge out Braun for Finals MVP, but LeBron has overtaken him. He's still averaging 25 points at 9 boards in this series. He's been the clear second-best player in this series for the Lakers, maybe even the second-best players in the series for both teams.
All right, cool. All right. Well, yeah, like we said, we had to get a little creative with our list because, at least I did, because we want to cover as many people as possible and not give the obvious here for our Players of the Week, is we only have about, I don't know, maybe 18 guys to pick from. Player of the Week, Eric Spoelstra. No, I was kidding. But anyways, that's going to wrap up our Players of the Week. And last but not least, got a little creative this week for our All-NBA team. All-NBA Finals moments. So me and Matt compiled lists. Again, did not tell each other. Five of the best moments in the NBA Finals. So Matt, what was first on your list?
This is probably a really obvious one. We're going to go 2016 Game 7. LeBron with a block by LeBron on Iguodala. Kyrie game winner, and then the often forgotten Kevin Love stop on Curry in that Game 7, that clutch defensive stop after Kyrie hit that 3. I think those are all great moments in a great game. I think that's an obvious one.
Yeah, that was a pretty obvious one. I'm not going to lie. And that whole sequence was also on my list as well, mainly because I lived through it. We both did. And that last 2 minutes or so for the Cavs was some of the most clutch basketball I have ever seen in my life for multiple reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, though, one I had on my list as well is Ray Allen's Game 6 3-pointer, the rebound by Chris Bosh, offensive rebound, kicks it to the corner to Ray Allen, hits the shot. They were already rolling out the Larry O'Brien trophy because they figured the Spurs were going to win. The Heat go on a massive run. They end up winning in Game 6, kind of steal the momentum from the Spurs in that series, and end up winning Game 7. And LeBron James won his second NBA title.
Yeah, one of the most famous Mike Green calls in NBA Finals history. I love Mike Green. But obviously that shot was huge. Might have even saved LeBron's legacy. Who knows?
A little bit.
Yeah. So Ray Allen is definitely still getting those checks from LeBron. So I think that was also on my list. So we see it all the time on ESPN's Instagram page. They post like 3 times a week, so it's got to be on this list.
All right, Matt. So what else made your list here?
All right, I got going back to the 90s here. I'm going with the Michael Jordan shrug against the Portland Trailblazers after Clyde Drexler was talking all that rah-rah, saying that he could stop Michael Jordan, and then he hit, of course, those 6 threes in the first half, gave us a little shrug. It's one of the most iconic moments in NBA history, and it's, always played when they talk about the finals and finals history, so it's got to be on this list.
Yeah, it's a great one. I thought you were about to steal mine, but that one's definitely worthy of 2 because I had Michael Jordan's flu game on my list because and whether it was a flu or not, we'll see. I don't think it was, but he was very impaired and not well. And nevertheless, it was physically obvious, and what Michael Jordan does is hit a whole nother gear mentally, and that was sheer willpower to end up winning that game. And really kind of cementing his legacy as arguably the greatest to ever play the game.
Yeah, obviously another one when they talk about Jordan's legacy, when they talk about the NBA Finals, they always bring that story up.
All right, yeah, cool. All right, Matt, what's number, I believe, 4 on your list now?
Yep. So I'm going to do a little bit of Sixers favoritism here. Allen Iverson steps over to Ron Lue. That clutch shot in overtime. It was the only game they won that series. They were severely outmatched, but they won that first game. Iverson with that clutch shot. Obviously, another iconic finals moment, stepping over to Ron Lue. You could say now you can make it a meme, make Doc Rivers, Allen Iverson, and he's stepping over to Ron Lue for the Sixers job. But anyway, one of the most iconic moments in NBA Finals history. What else can I say?
Yeah, I knew you had to put the freaking Sixers in there. I'm going to go a little further back here, and that's from the 1988 NBA Finals when the Pistons won back-to-back. I believe they went back-to-back. But that was Isaiah Thomas scoring 25 points in the third quarter, and that was in Game 6 with the ankle. People forget about that, but, his ankle, it was really messed up. It was a really, really severe sprain. And I know people don't really like Isaiah Thomas. He's kind of like an older Kyrie Irving, if you will. Just loves to complain about everything and has awful takes. But he was a great player, one of the greatest guards of all time. And he really, showed that and showed the heart of a champion and that mental toughness to fight through an injury like that.
Yeah, that was actually also on my list, Hunter. You stole it.
Was it?
I thought I was going to guess. I thought that was going to be a good
No, you did not.
Sorry. But he pretty much willed them in that game. They were up 3-2 in the series, and they ended up losing that game and then losing the next game too. So, obviously he did everything he could, but it just wasn't enough.
Yep. And then last but not least, I don't know if it's top 5 moment of all time, but it was a personal favorite of mine, and that was in Game 7 of the 2010 NBA Finals, the last time the Lakers won. Ron Artest hit the game-closing shot against the Boston Celtics. That obviously came after they lost in 2008 to the Celtics. Kobe Bryant got his revenge tour completed. And then Ron Artest had one of the greatest post-game interviews of all time. Kobe passed me the ball. He passed me the ball. And then, had that crazy rant. Then he made a song about it. And hopefully I'll be playing that Friday night.
Yeah, we talked about this play a little bit last week as well. Classic play. I think it's more classic just because of the interview than more so the shot itself. But, great moment, great post-game moment, and obviously the last Kobe championship. So rest well in our hearts.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. That's going to wrap it up here for Ball Don't Lie. Again, we've been bumping out content and things like that. It's obviously going to slow down tremendously next week. We'll see how we're going to go about things. But anyways, though, appreciate all the support. And League Show, baby, don't drown.
Yeah, let's see if the Lakers win on Friday night, just for Hunter Sandy.
Yes, sir. All right, let's go. Appreciate it, and we'll catch you next week, maybe.
See you guys.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.